However, I suppose the question is, Jack, a very good morning to you. Will it cut through in any way, shape or form for the long term for the Tories? Is it that more of them sort of, throwing caution to the wind and just saying anything that makes them look popular?
Morning, Mike. Yeah, I think the latter is probably a bit more likely. I don't see in the long term this really shifting the polls. I was in the hall yesterday for her speech. It was well delivered, which you can't always say about Kenny Badenoch. It hit the right notes on things like immigration, crime, the economy. And I do actually think this stamp duty announcement will cut through with voters. It's retail. It's probably quite a popular policy, getting rid of it. The problem is that it feels... the Tory government has never felt so far from power. Many people will see this, like it, but go, so what? It's probably never going to happen. And, often with these conference speeches, as I write in The Sun today, they can be a bit like, bubbles frozen in time, totally detached from what is going on actually in the real world. Both Starmer and Kelly Badenoch were cheered to the rafters by their respective sides, but they're going to come back down with a massive crashing reality check in Westminster when they return because, one, Nigel Farage is still miles ahead in polls, and two, I think that really the budget is probably going to be the biggest political event of this year. Now, I do genuinely think, because I think the budget is going to be dreadful, that the Tories have an opening there because they increasingly see the economy as the battleground they want to fight the next election. And if Rachel Reeves whacks up taxes even more and we get more into this low growth, high tax doom loop, which Labour are perpetuating, then maybe people will look for economic competence, and that's where the Tories can really make their pitch.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a funny old week, hasn't it, really? Because reform, in my estimation, have never been quieter. We haven't really heard very much from Nigel Farage. I mean, there was a poll, I think we spoke about it earlier in the week, at the weekend, in which it showed that Nigel Farage was now the most likely person to be wanted as a Prime Minister over Keir Starmer, who's lost about 10 points since March. And we mentioned that earlier. But it's almost as though they've taken a decision to let the Tories have their week, if you like, have their time at a conference, and just wait and watch their sort of demise, if you like.
Yeah, I think after the defection of Danny Kruger about a month ago, people thought, well, if this is the one a month before conference, surely they've got someone up their sleeve to wheel out and totally steal the Tories' thunder. We had a sort of a trickle of councillors, on the Tuesday, I think it was, but it didn't really shift the dial. And on the Wednesday, I spoke to a senior Reform official and said, are you having a big defection today? They said no. And I said, well, are you putting out a response immediately after Kelly Badenoch's speech? And they replied saying, why would we? She's totally irrelevant. There is no point giving her the time of day, and actually, letting her fade into irrelevance is probably even more damaging than her being attacked. And I think that is probably the calculation they are making. I think the issue with that slightly is that you do want to be seen to be making your case out there in the media, and Nigel Farage has done very well by basically just being on the airwaves almost every single day. Whereas if you look over the summer, Labour and the Tories really sort of left the pitch and left it open for reform, and that's when they really started to charge up the polls. And so, they have been a bit quiet, although, we do come back to Westminster next week, and presumably then they'll get some more stuff out of the trout.
Sure, and people have pointed out to me and some of these people who have pointed out to me are actually Labour supporting individuals. Keir Starmer comes back from India, and he hasn't really disappeared from view any of the things that were a problem before all of these conference scenarios happened. Morgan McSweeney's still sort of stuck in the mire about the £740,000 donation. That's not gone away. He's still got a problem with his backbenchers. He's still got a problem with Lucy Powell possibly becoming the deputy leader of the party, which will put pressure on him because she doesn't like him very much. He's still the most unpopular Prime Minister that we've ever seen. So, it's kind of back to where he was, I guess, a month ago.
Yeah, here we go, Mike. I'll give you a little exclusive nugget. I heard that actually at the Tory party conference, some of the Tory officials actually met with the Electoral Commission who go there to actually attend some of these events, and they said they put forward a pretty robust case for the Electoral Commission to reopen their investigation into Morgan McSweeney.
Yeah.
Now, whether they will or not, I think it remains to be seen. The Commission seemed pretty robust about the fact that they were not going to do so. But you're right, clearly that's still in the mix. But I think more importantly is this budget coming down in November, because it looks to be absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
And for Rachel Reeves, who stood up in the House of Commons last year, raised taxes by 40 billion, said that it was a one-off and her hand was forced by Tory recklessness to try and do that again, just will not wash with the public. But the problem is, she's totally boxed herself in. The bond markets won't accept any more borrowing, rightly so. But her party will not accept any spending cuts whatsoever, especially in the eye-watering welfare bill. Growth is on the floor, and which means that the only thing which she can do is put up taxes. Now, that is not going to be purely taxes which do not hit ordinary people, as they say, because any economist will tell you that if you put up taxes on businesses or the rest of it, it gets passed down to ordinary consumers, people that read my paper and watch your show, and they're going to be the ones that pay the price for all of this. Now, that is where I think the Tories seriously have some sort of opening, because even after Liz Truss and the chaos that came with that, if you still look at like the sort of the polls, and I was looking at the YouGov tracker yesterday, they are still the most trusted party on the economy, and not, to be fair, most parties don't have a very good standing on the economy in the minds of the public, but the Tories are at the top of that tree. And so they can, I think, have an opening really to try and use the budget as a way of getting back on the front foot. And I think that will be their opening more than any conference speech.
Yeah, interesting. We came in this morning and thought, there's not many great stories around today. There's no kind of overarching theme. So we dug out this rather bizarre walk in the woods video, which involves Keir Starmer and Gary Neville, just before you'll remember it, just before the election took place. I think it was in sort of June of last year. Have a look at this, right? This is them talking about Rachel Reeves, and I think you may get a wry smile. Check it out.
How do you really comfort people on tax? Because that is the biggest challenge to any Labour government. You can't manage the economy.
It's one of the reasons I appointed Rachel Reeves to the role of Chancellor, because she's obviously got Bank of England experience, and she's got sort of iron rules as Rachel. She will not sign off anything unless it's fully costed and fully funded. Tax levels now are the highest for 70 years, so we can't just go and pull the tax lever. That's why we've said no increase in income tax, in national insurance or VAT. You've got to show, I understand, it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's easy to make fun of them, but I'm going to do it anyway, because that is the most ridiculous conversation I think I've ever seen, where he talks about Rachel Reeves having, iron rules about the economy. She's already contradicted herself several times. She's already said that she wouldn't come back with more taxes. She's going to have to do it. She's already said that, she's never going to have to do what she did last year. She's already going to be contradicting that. The whole thing is a massive car crash. And there's Keir Starmer there talking about what he thinks is going to be the most fantastic chancellor ever.
Yeah, he said we can't just pull the tax lever.
Yeah.
I mean, Keir Starmer has grabbed the tax lever with both hands, wrapped his legs around it, and leaned back as far as he can.
Exactly.
This is going to be a budget which is going to put taxes up even more, we understand, and it will be totally unpalatable to the public. Not only because they said before the election they weren't going to raise taxes. They then put up taxes on national insurance, and they did some weird sort of warped verbal gymnastics to try and justify the fact that they only meant they weren't going to put taxes up on employees and not employers, even though employees will feel the hit from that, obviously. Then they said at the last budget, well, obviously we have to do this, but it's only going to be a once in a parliament decision to raise taxes. And now they're coming back for more. We understand Rachel Reeves is very angry with the Office for Budget Responsibility because they have decided to embark on a review of productivity of the last few years, and they are likely to downgrade estimations by, around 20 to 30 billion. Now, Rachel Reeves clearly is left in a tighter spot with that, but this was a chancellor who was absolutely worshipping of the OBR when they were a thorn in the Tory side, and now that they're a thorn in her side, she's quite angry with them. So maybe she regrets being so fawning over them in the past. But yeah, Mike, it's going to be a pretty miserable few months, and you would imagine that that is where the Tories and Reform really try and grasp the nettle.
Yes. And finally, Jack, I mean, who would you say sort of winners, if you were having a scorecard on sort of conference season, winners and losers, you know, anything extraordinary that happened? Anybody moved up further than you thought they would, or moved down further than you thought they would?
Do you know what? This is going to be, you're probably not going to like this answer. The three main parties, Reform, Tories and Labour, I don't really think it shifted the dial. I think probably Kemi, in the fact that, you know, in terms of seeing off any immediate leadership threats, you know, she is now sort of G'd up her grassroots, because I think that she probably wouldn't have really lasted beyond May, and there's pretty dismal local elections. She's now bought herself a bit of time. Interesting. I do not agree, you do not agree probably with a single word he says, but Zach Polanski has actually probably put himself as the far left candidate now in elections. He totally seems to have trampled over your party in the shambles that is. And you know, he's very good on social media. You know, he's pretty you know, articulate. I think that most people will be absolutely petrified and terrified with the things he wants to do. But you know, in terms of him rallying his base, you know, he hasn't had a bad conference.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly been much more visible than anybody knew about him before, so we shall see. I mean, I can only ever see him as the man that used to hypnotise women to get bigger breasts. So, you know,
well, I'm not sure he's going to win any votes, but you know, he definitely caused the stir, didn't he? He knows how to grab a headline.
Absolutely. Jack, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Elsom, big piece of The Sun today, political editor of The Sun, of